Brought to you by JMR Rentals, professional digital cinema and broadcast equipment rentals in Brooklyn, New York. JMRNY.com. Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend. I'm Jason Godbey, and today on the program, we're going to do something a little bit different. Today, we're looking at independent movie theaters. One such theater is the Roxy Cinema, located in the Roxy Hotel in the Tribeca section of New York City. Since the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020, many independent theaters have been bought out by larger theater chains or were forced to shut down altogether. The Roxy Cinema is still operating today, thanks in part to this week's guest. And joining me now via Zoom is the Roxy Cinema director, Miss Illyse Singer. Welcome, Illyse.
Hi, Jason. Glad to be here.
Hey, it's great to have you. I'm glad we could finally do this. I know we had some back and forth, and you were away, and so I'm glad that we finally found some time to sit down and talk. But I was really interested in the Roxy. I went there. I saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood there.
Oh, yeah.
I had never been in the theater before, and I thought, well, this is just a lovely little theater. I wonder kind of what's the story behind it. And it got me thinking about independent movie theaters in general and kind of how they work and how they're able to compete because everything now is a big chain. So I want to talk to you about all that stuff. But first, I want to kind of talk to you about the origins of the Roxy as a movie theater. How did you guys come to be? Like, what is the origin story?
The hotel was always built with the screening room, and it was used for private functions and, premieres and receptions and that kind of nature, but it sat empty a lot of the time. And so they decided that, we have this gorgeous screening room with like top of the line 35 millimeter projectors and all the best equipment. Why don't we have a public program here? So I came on about 5 years ago when they decided to move in that direction to kind of build the program out.
I think you're being a little bit modest because you kind of built that from the ground up, right?
Yeah, I did.
With an independent cinema, I think a lot of people think, well, oh, it's an independent cinema, so it's like an art house cinema.
Mhm.
They only show movies that nobody wants to see, and like only Williamsburg hipsters go there on Friday nights or something. So, can you kind of talk about like what the criteria is? Like, how do you guys select movies and what types of films you show?
We show a mix of all kinds of films. We do show a lot of art house cinema. We show a lot of foreign, independent, but we are expanding and doing a lot of avant-garde films. Lately, we've partnered with the Museum of Sex and the Filmmakers Co-op. I bring in a lot of independent filmmakers that aren't even distributed. So I kind of like to have a mix of very well-known films and then films that you're not going to hear about unless you come to the Roxy to actually see what's in action.
In terms of that, like, is that kind of this is who we want to be, this is our identity, or was this kind of a business decision to differentiate yourself from all the other big chains? Because you're in New York City, it's a
Yeah.
giant cinema market. We have the AMC and the Regals, and like there's and we and people in New York do go to the movies. It's a big market. So was this kind of a business decision to like differentiate yourself from them, or was it more of kind of like this is our artistic identity kind of thing?
I mean, I would say it's probably a little bit of both. We're one screen, right, in Manhattan. So that presents a challenge of its own. When you only have one screen to play showtimes, you can't open up blockbuster films, like I that's the thing, like I can't give clean runs to titles, meaning I'm not going to show one film for the entire week that we're open every single showtime. Because I'm working with one screen, I really try to vary the program as much as I can. And so we're doing typically like two show times on Thursday, 2 to 3 on Friday, 3 to 4 Saturday, and usually 3 on Sunday. And with that, I try to get a mix of films in. So it's like you could come to the Roxy and spend your whole day Saturday, and there's going to be like a different film playing in each slot. And I kind of love that. I love the idea of just like staying in a theater all day.
We used to be like this as a country back in the golden age of cinema. There weren't multiplexes. There weren't like these places that showed, a bunch of different movies. And there also wasn't the kind of demand from movie theaters that you have to show our movie X amount of dates. I know from talking to other theater administrators that the profit margins with these big blockbusters are a lot less when you're the exhibitor, because they demand such a big part of the profit. You know, when your movie costs $200 million, and you have to make $1 billion in order for it to kind of break even. So I understand that business practice, but my main reason for going to an independent theater would be the experience. So, like, what can you guys, besides the different kinds of films, like, what do you guys offer that's different than, when I go to a giant blockchain kind of place?
I think what's really special about the Roxy is it's such a beautiful, intimate experience. You walk in and it's all red velvet, so you feel like you're in this deco jewel box cinema. And, we serve like really beautiful wine and really nice craft cocktails that you can bring in and enjoy while you're watching the film. And, it only seats 118 people, which is relatively small for a movie theater size. So when we are doing special events, which I really try to do as many Q&As as possible, bringing in my favorite directors, actors, producers, musicians, like all over the board, because it creates such an intimate experience when you're having that talk back with the audience, and it's really special. I don't think you're finding that experience like at the other theaters that are in New York City.
Can you talk about that a little bit in terms of some of the, I mean, brag a little bit about the special events that you've had?
One of the things that I'm most proud of, I'm a really big Nicolas Cage fan. I just always have been. I think he's one of the greatest actors of all time. And so I met him and I put on his retrospective at the Roxy, and he came and did a Q&A. And that was just so special. We got to watch Wild at Heart, the X-rated version that he had not watched since 1990 in Cannes. I had Paul Schrader come in for First Reformed. That was pretty epic. I had Ethan Hawke in for Blaze. We have a lot of really amazing musicians come. So I just had OK Kaya. We had Japanese Breakfast before, Beach Fossils, the Black Lips. We're working on bringing in more musicians. And, we just had John Wilson from How To with John Wilson on HBO. We had Hamilton Morris from Vice. So I'm kind of spanning all different kinds of artists, from musicians to TV documentarians to chemists. Really, like, we want everyone to come in and just share their passion with us.
So we're in 2022 now, and New York State has just lifted mask mandates and things like that. But a lot of theaters were really hit hard through the pandemic. How were you guys able to deal with that? Did you have to shut down? Did you do a lighter program? Like, how did you guys manage through all that?
We shut down Friday, March 13th, and I think that everyone remained on staff till about June, even though we were working remote, and of course the theater was closed. And yeah, we shut down for it was about 1 year. And to be honest, I didn't know if like movies were ever gonna come back. I was thinking about what my next steps in life were. And then we kind of got word that movie theaters were allowed to open. I think it was March of 2021. So I rejoined I think it was the end of March, and it took all of April planning how to reopen and putting into policy a new procedure and how we could make a safe cinema going experience. And it's been really interesting. What I will say is that I've actually noticed a spike in viewership and attendance post whatever, the year that we were all kind of not doing anything. I think people are so desperate to see movies on 35 in a communal space. And so it's amazing to just see how we've been able to kind of bounce back from not being there for a year.
The future of cinema has been in question for a while now. For the Roxy and independent cinema as well, do you see, like, will you need to have a virtual component? Will you need to have your own streaming channel or something? Or, do you think you can still bring people in?
I don't think that that's ever been our model, or it will be moving forward. I think what's really important, I mean, in a way, I almost feel like what we're doing, like movie theaters that show 35 millimeter, we are like museums in a way. It is kind of a dying art form. It's difficult to preserve films unless they're under the most perfect of conditions. They're destroyed. And so I think there is something really important in in showing films in this medium. That's something that was always really important to Jonas Mekas and anthology film archives. And so I feel like that's kind of one of our like main tenets of what we want to do at the Roxy. So I don't think that we would move that way. I don't want to say never, but we had the option to do like virtual screenings, like a lot of the theaters did, and I know that they had to pivot. I think we're lucky that we are housed inside of a hotel that we didn't have to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think a thing that is really important is we create a lot of archival footage by recording all of the people that come in for Q&A. So like I do have video of Jonas Mekas before he passed talking to an audience that was so inspiring and so beautiful. And so I think the collection of interviews that we have, like that are left online that people can go watch, that's like the thing that we offer into that space.
I've spoken about this with film festivals as well, because a lot of film festivals were forced to go online. And, we covered a bunch of them, and, you're talking to people like this. It's a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of breakout rooms and things like that. It's not, for me, it's, on one hand, it's great because you don't have to leave your house, and, you can do it in your pajamas if you want. But there is that thing about like going to a movie theater and shaking somebody's hand and handing somebody a business card and, being able to communicate that way. And I feel like that was really missed by the film community.
I did virtual Sundance this year. I had my ticket booked to Park City and it was canceled a week before. And I have to say, it was one of the most lonely, isolating, depressing experiences of my life. And there was a part of me that was like, oh, this will be great. I won't be as tired as I normally am at a festival. And it's just the magic of film is the connection and the collaborations and getting to meet people and be excited about things in person. It doesn't translate. And I think that's like what people are even noticing. It's like when I watch a film alone in my house and then I watch it with like a full packed audience, it's a different experience. You're going to feel differently. You're going to think different about the film. And so I think like we have to keep that going for as long as we can,
A lot of people have talked about, oh, the Zoomers, the Gen Zers, they're not going to care about movie theaters as a communal space.
Right.
I remember I was watching this documentary, and Michael Chapman, great cinematographer, he referred to movie theaters as the church of the 20th century. Like, this is where we go. This is how we learned. Like, if you were a guy, this is how you learned how to be with girls. This is how you learned how to emulate your heroes. Turns out a lot of those things were wrong, but they served for a time, and it was before television, before this phenomenon of streaming. It was the movies, and the thing that we got in the movies too was just the experience of laughing together and crying together, and having that pathos and that shared experience with a group of strangers in the dark. Which, I mean, yeah, I love watching movies on my couch, but it's great when somebody does something funny and 100 people break apart, from it. And my fear is that I just don't know how long that will last, and I'm worried that it won't. And I feel like the big theaters, there's been this whole decision lately about they reversed the decision. So there was a law years ago where movie distributors could not own movie theaters. So if you were a big studio, if you were Paramount or Disney, or if you were Warner Brothers, you couldn't own a theater chain as well. They did not allow you to control the entire line, means of production and the means of distribution. And now that's done. That's over. So I'm kind of waiting for the day when everything's a Disney theater and everything's a blockbuster and it becomes Disneyland at the movies, and we're just seeing, the next Avengers film or something like that. If that's the direction we're going, which I feel is a sad direction, do you feel like there's still a place for small theaters like the Roxy and the other places around?
Oh, yeah. And I think it's going to make it that much more important if that's the way that it goes. Because, like, I don't know, for me, I grew up in Miami and, there is a really amazing art house independent scene happening now. It was a little bit not as easy. And so, like, I grew up in the suburbs And at 16, I was catching the bus to get to the beach to go watch Godard's Breathless at the Cinematheque there. It's like, I feel like what collecting vinyl has become now. Like there are places that, in New York, you only DJ vinyl. That's like a thing. And so I feel like that's just going to become that much more important and special. So I think that people that love film are always going to love film, and they're going to find a way to see it in a community. And I think that's so special about like what more independent theaters are doing is like they're keeping it alive and they're creating the community that we also desperately need.
And I don't know if this is possible, and I honestly don't know if you want this, but a lot of people, like I said before, like they think about cinemas like this as being, it's just for Williamsburg, Bushwick hipsters. It's just for the downtown set. It's only for, cities like New York and LA, or other, metropolitan places around. Do you think that, this could be more accessible, or do you feel like your theater is accessible to somebody who just, kind of likes movies, but maybe hasn't experienced, some of these films before? And how do you bring those people in if that's what you want to do?
It's really interesting to me. I think, I've watched the theater and the audience grow and diversify over the last 5 years. Like where when we first started, no one knew about us. And it was mostly like people local to the Tribeca neighborhood. And then it grew. And then, there's a lot of regulars that come from uptown, from all different parts of Brooklyn. And then, I think one of my favorite experiences was I was showing Sunset Boulevard on 35, and I think it sold out. This was a few years ago, and everyone was under the age of 30. And I think that it was their first time seeing Sunset Boulevard, period, but also definitely on 35. And that was cool because I'm like, oh, we're now reaching people that never got the chance to see this, or that like I did go to film school. I studied like film history. I got to see a lot of this stuff all the time. And what I'm trying to do is like kind of recreate that experience for people that didn't get that opportunity, because there is a magic to just seeing this stuff on the big screen in the format that it was meant to be in.
You spoke about 35 millimeter projection, and for those who don't know, probably we should explain. So most theaters now show films digitally. They have digital projection, and part of that is a convenience thing, it's a cost thing, and it's also a security thing. You guys, do you only show 35, or do you also have digital as well?
We do digital, and sometimes I'll do 4K restorations because we do have a 4K projector. When I can get a film on 35, I prefer it and I show it over digital.
I want to say it was like either Quentin Tarantino, maybe it was Walter Murch. They were talking about the experience of watching a film projected digitally versus watching on 35. And, in 35, there's something about film going through a gate where when you watch it, your mind has to jump over the spaces in between the frames. And with digital, you don't have to do that. So their argument was that you're actually more engaged because you're working a little bit harder. You're a little bit more involved in the film. Now, I don't know if there's scientific merit to this. Like I don't know if people, professional scientists have studied this, but it sounds pretty good to me. Like it does sound a bit more like, because you're in that realm of suspension of disbelief. And, it's that old thing about cinema and illusion, right? Where it's still pictures moving at such a rate that they appear to move. And you don't really get that on a digital projection. Do you feel like theaters like yours and other theaters will serve as kind of an inspiration for little places to open up?
Yeah, I definitely think that. And I think there's a lot of filmmakers that are choosing to film their new films on 35. And what's really cool is seeing distributors strike new 35 millimeter prints. Like there is Red Rocket we showed on 35. There's a bunch of like the new Safdie Brothers films were all cut on 35, and people want to see new films on 35.
Moving forward, we're coming into like summer here and fall. What do you see as the plans for the Roxy, and how do people find you if they want to know more? If they're in New York City and they want to find more information?
We'll have a bunch of great series coming up, a lot on 35, and definitely a lot of interesting guests stopping by for Q&As. So I would say the best way to keep afloat of everything that we're doing is follow us on Instagram at Roxy Cinema Tribeca. We're on Twitter at Roxy_Cinema, and the website is RoxyCinema.Tribeca.com.
Thank you so much for doing this. I know you're taking time out of a busy day. We'll hope to get down there soon. Maybe we can do an event together or something, but this is a real pleasure. I'm glad we finally got to do this. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks so much.
And that's all we got for you today. Thanks so much for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, visit our website, norestfortheweekendpodcast.com. Don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And now you can find our video on Spotify. So if you're a Spotify user, you can watch us right there on your phone. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/getbehindtherabbit. Once again, I'd like to thank my guest, Illyse Singer, and our sponsor, JMR Rentals. For Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.